Alrighty guys, welcome back to Evolution and Integration. Matt Grabowski here, the Integrated Man, and today I have a really cool episode where we're gonna go over how to move well. On this show of Evolution and Integration, I go over how do we integrate our mind, our body, and our spirit with the way that we evolved as humans to traverse this modern landscape and all the fun stuff we have going on here to be as happy and healthy as you can be. And on today's episode, we're gonna go over movement, right? Why is movement important? Kind of what is it as a concept? And then we're gonna go over this really cool pyramid of movement, right? To basically give you the rundown on how I work with clients, how I teach people this philosophy of movement, right? Why it's important, how can we use this pyramid as a filter to understand maybe what should we prioritize when we're starting to make investments and sacrifices in our life and to improve our lifestyle, improve our movement. This might help you as a filter to make a better decision for where you're at on your own health and wellness journey. To start, right, what is movement? Why is movement important and how do we do it? All right. Why are we even talking about movement? The reason being, movement is the flow of energy, right? When someone is stagnant, when energy is stagnant and movement ceases to exist, life tends to stop, right? When the nutrients in the waste products slow down in our body, when we start to, let's just focus on that. When the nutrients and waste products stop flowing, we get poor circulation, we start to get poor cardiac function, our lymph system doesn't work as well, our immune system doesn't work as well, and you can see how that isn't necessarily leading to a happy and a healthy life. Also, something that's really cool is one of the biggest predictors of morbidity and when someone's mortality and when someone's gonna die is, this was done in a doctor's office. So the way you could tell how long your patient's gonna live is how fast and how well they walk into your office. And you can just kind of blanket this statement to, if you see someone and they can't move quickly, they can't walk quickly, most likely their life is gonna end kind of shortly, because as we lose our mobility, as we lose our ability to move in this world, our chances of moving closer to things that we want, doing things that we like, and the movement of that nutrition and waste management in our body, right, and all these complex systems decreases, and that tends to indicate that either one, you're just old, and that's what happens when you get older and later in life, and beautiful circle of life. And other things, if you're young and you're not moving well, you need to do something differently, because otherwise shit isn't gonna go well for you. And that's why I'm here, fam. Okay, so how do we move? This is the pyramid of movement. This is not something that I have created. This is something that is widely out there. This is my take on it, and I'm gonna, while I go through this whole kind of pyramid, I'm gonna go over how you can apply it in your own life. How can you actually take what you're doing right now and maybe change 1, 2, or 3 things to build some momentum to have change in your life, right? Whether it's based around movement, will have you doing things more readily in life because you're gonna have more energy, you're gonna take control and start breathing better, you're gonna get out in the sunlight, right? We're gonna talk about all the things, you're gonna move your body better, well, you're gonna gain muscle, you're gonna lose fat if you apply these principles correctly, all right? And it's just gonna make you happy and healthier. So let's dive in. So first, to understand this pyramid, okay? The bottom here is what the bulk majority of your focus should be on, right? And as we go up the pyramid, you can see the top is power. Once you get all these things down, we can focus on this. That's a good general rule to start with. So we're gonna start with daily activity. So what is that? This is the daily flow of energy, okay? This is digestion. This is how our emotions move. This is how literal oxygen and CO2 moves throughout our body. How do we move energy throughout the system? Okay, and a big part of this is inactivity and stagnation. Unfortunately, with our modern lifestyles, we have a hyper focus on multitasking. And how does this play out in life? Well, we listen to podcasts and we drive to work, right? We sit down all day. When we're at work, we're sitting on a computer because we can multitask so much there. And our life is just sedentary now because a lot of us work at home, a lot of us work in chairs, a lot of us aren't doing the manual labor that we've done in antiquity to go get food, to hunt for ourselves, to gather water, to care for others, to build houses. The rigors, thankfully in modernity, we can specialize other people to build houses for us. We can specialize other people to hunt, to gather food, while we can sit and do something that we enjoy, that we are specialized in, right? There's a yin yang, there's a push pull to everything. In this modernity that we've taken on, we've gotten very inactive as humans. We tend to start we look at screens like, I think it's like over 11 hours per day on average, which is crazy. And if you do less than that, just realize there's people also doing more than that, more than 11 hours per day. And this inactivity, sitting down all day, has consequences. If you checked out my last video that I did on stress in the environment and how that plays out in our genetic expression and how we turn out in this life, I talked about posture. And when we're sitting down like this all day, what does it force us to do? It forces us to do this all day. And then our shoulders become rounded. We get a lower, steeper rib angle. It leads to back issues, neck issues, jaw issues, hip issues, everything. So these lack of movement has consequences. And this is why the daily activity is one of my biggest focuses when working with people, to just get moving more. And one of my favorite things is this concept of movement snacks. This is the idea of, hey, I just worked for an hour. Why don't I jump on my rebounder for 5 minutes? Why don't I go on a quick walk outside in the sun, in nature, around some trees for 10 minutes? Why don't I do 15 burpees really quick, right? In between the switchover of one task to another task. Not only is it going to make you feel better, but if you do that 5 or 6 times throughout the day, that equates to an hour of movement. Or maybe you just want to go for an hour walk and you can add in 1 or 2 of those other movements. We have a very poor idea of movement in our culture. And I use this example, I kind of came up with this, and I use this with my clients a lot, that I want you to imagine a sandwich that has these massive, Texas toast is like that really thick bread, right? And then we have like one little layer of steak on it, right? Maybe like some Philly cheesesteak is what I'm thinking about. Does that make for a good sandwich? No. Okay. You can kind of think about this as like the toast, the bread is inactivity, right? We wake up, we get in a car, we sit around all day, we do work. You're literally inactive most of the time. People that work on computers, or even that don't, like sit down a lot throughout the day. Big stack of inactivity with this little HIIT, CrossFit, Orange Theory, booty boot camp, at home workout. That's this thin layer of HIIT. That's this thin layer of intense, fucking crushing it workout. And we'll talk a little bit about that later, but you understand what I mean. And then there's more inactivity. Then we sit down, then we watch Netflix, then we lay in bed, right? That doesn't make a good sandwich. What we want to do is have, it's still okay to have decently thin, good sized bread and inactivity in there, because you're not going to fucking change your entire life, right? And leisure is important. But what we want to do on there is add some more ingredients. We want some condiments, we want some lettuce, we want some vegetables, we want some cheese, meaning we want some movement snacks in the form of, we still have that base layer of exercise, but we want some outside walks, we want some stretching in the morning, we want some stretching at night, we want some rebounding, rope work, stretching at your desk. We just want to add more snacks in there, right, to make that sandwich balanced so that we don't have a ton of bread to the movement of all the other ingredients. Hopefully that analogy resonated with you. And then a big one with this daily activity is enjoyment and sustainability. Like finding things that you actually enjoy. For me, that's walking outside and like just disconnecting, not bringing my phone with me, and I walk my apartment complex 2 times. It gets around 15 minutes, 20 minutes if I want to make it a little bit longer. And doing that like twice a day, that gets I enjoy it. I enjoy getting out there, and it's important for you to find, what do you find enjoyable? Whether that's spinning ropes, whether that's doing kettlebell swings, doing burpees if you're crazy, or doing a rebounder, or like going on YouTube and finding some movement or stretching routines that you really enjoy. Maybe you like the instructor, maybe it's to music that you really like, whatever floats your boat. Whatever sustainable is what we're going for long term, right? And that's why this daily activity is at the bottom and sustainability is under here, because this is how you build a healthy lifestyle. This is like the lifestyle part of it. This is all specific to exercise and mobility. This is just like movement as a human. Think about it, guys. This is the part of the evolution, and integrating that into our modern lifestyle is we didn't used to like work out. Yes, different areas around the world, like the Spartans and the Persians, were very big into exercise, and that was for the warrior class to train these, specific portion of the men and women to be, warriors and to kill people when it was necessary, because that was necessary back then. But you didn't like go out and exercise. No, because washing your clothes and hunting and gathering food and moving materials around your community was exercise, right? And we've lost that. We've lost that sense of stress, and thank God that we don't have to do that, but we're feeling these detrimental issues because this daily activity, we're not as active as we used to be. So hopefully that makes sense. Maybe I'll do more in-depth videos on this specifically, but that's what you want to focus on, right? Setting goals of adding more movement snacks into it. Breathing is a really big one too. Like breath is movement, and we don't breathe effectively, so making sure we breathe in the belly, making sure we're breathing through our nose specifically, and doing breath work routines, getting outside, doing movement stacks, doing movements throughout the day, maybe going and taking the stairs, right? Perfect example. Like if you work up on the stairs, taking the stairs up and down, right? Easy, simple movement stacks. All right, next, we're gonna go over mobility and stability. This is the next portion of the pyramid. So it's the second thing that you wanna prioritize here, generally speaking. So posture and alignment. This is a big one. A lot of us have really shitty posture, whether that's because we're sitting around and we're inactive all periods of the day, whether we're doing exercises that may be not best for the posture we already have, or whether we're wearing shoes all the time. And we're sitting a lot really is like the number one factor in our posture and some of the exercises we're doing. And what do I mean by this? So the plumb line, a walker, and getting a coach. So a big one with this is if you're gonna take your mobility and stability serious, hire a coach. Hire someone that knows how to do this so that they can make a program for you. I do this myself. I'm trained at the Czech Institute and been learning about movement and biomechanics for like 6 years now. And I know a very in-depth assessment that helps me get to the root cause of a lot of people's misalignments and pain, whether that's shoulder, hip, ankle, back, and how to make a correct mobility and stability program. So if you're interested in that and learning more about that, shoot me a direct message and we can talk and we can chat more about that. Or if I don't float your boat, find someone else that does. It's just important to get professional advice in this because you can really jack yourself up. A really cool thing is a plumb line, which is essentially you can hang a string down from a weight which will anchor straight with gravity, and if you stand beside it, you want certain markers on your body to line up with that, and you can go and research that. It's really cool because sometimes you'll see that people's hips are forward and they're like this, and you can see their hips are forward of the plumb line, right? And that indicates different imbalances in the musculoskeletal system. From this mobility and stability standpoint, you can think of your body like a bicycle wheel. Right? A lot of people don't know this, but the bicycle wheel is held together by tension by the spokes. Okay, so the power is put through the axle, that power goes through the spokes out to the tire. You can think about that like our body, and our muscles are the different spokes. If you've ever seen a wheel that needs to be like balanced and tightened appropriately, there are tight spokes and there are loose spokes, and then the wheel gets all wobbly. If you try to roll the wheel down, it'll and fall over. You got to figure out what spokes are tight on you and what spokes are loose on you. And then we got to figure out how can we mobilize and stretch the tight spokes, and how can we strengthen and tighten up the tight spokes. Okay, this is something I'm going to talk about later, but unfortunately a lot of people who have the propensity to have a lot of loose spokes just then, because they're loose, have the predisposition to keep stretching and do lots of yoga. I'll just talk about it right now because they're good at that. It's like, wow, I can do all these crazy poses. I'm good at yoga, right? I want to keep doing that. And unfortunately, there's this scale of flexibility. Some people are very flexible. Some people are less flexible. I'm more on the less flexible side, which means my muscles tend to protect my joints overactively, which means I tend to get more muscular issues than joint issues. But on the opposite side of the spectrum, some people are hyper flexible, right? Females tend to be this too because of birthing reasons, and they need to be flexible to have a baby. And there's other reasons why too. But if you're hyper flexible, your joints, your muscles don't tend to be like gatekeepers. They don't hold you back a lot. So you can bend over really far, and you see like girls doing RDLs or guys doing RDLs where they can go the whole way down. Their muscles aren't protecting their joints, and you can mess up your joints a lot. And that tends to happen with people that are chronic yoga people, because their muscles are so loose that it doesn't provide the right stability in the joints, right? It's always a push-pull with joints, right? And if you just have loosey-goosey gatekeepers, right, then all this extra movement can get in and the joints aren't protected. And that's really what the mobility and stability is about, is how do we take all these joints in the body, the hips, all the spinal joints, the neck, the shoulder, to have optimal mobility and stability for health, for athletics, in any work or sport environment that you're in. So I kind of talked about all that. A big thing with stability is understanding that there are different types of muscles in the body, okay? And it's a spectrum, okay? There are stabilizer muscles and there are moving muscles. It's not like you're one or the other. It makes up the difference. And a really cool thing is just the muscle fiber types. There are certain muscle fiber types on the stability side that take longer to fatigue, but they don't produce as much power. Okay, you can think of this like your shoulder stabilizers, right? Certain muscles in the shoulder complex. Or a really good example, okay, perfect, is your calf. You have your soleus, and then you have your gastrocnemius. The gastroc is on the outside, the soleus is deeper. The soleus is a stabilizer. The gastroc is more muscle fiber type to be a mover. It's more powerful. They serve different purposes, but knowing that there's a difference between the two, the stabilizers have to be conditioned in a manner with the sets, the reps, the tempo, the time under tension to fatigue them longer, okay? Like getting into sets and reps that may take over 2 minutes, 4 minutes long. You can think of this like farmer carries or like longer planks and things like that. Okay, that's conditioning the stabilizers of the joint complexes and of your core to hold on. And a really big thing that I focus on with my clients is core stability, spinal positioning, hip stability, and ankle stability, so that we can move well, we can walk well, we have good posture when we're standing upright, we have good ankle mobility. And you know, the second part of this, we kind of focus on stability, is mobility. All right, this sedentary lifestyle has wreaked havoc on all of our joints, really. The big ones are our rounded shoulders, our neck that is associated with that, our ankles. We don't have good ankle dorsiflexion, so you can see you might not be able to see that far, but I can get into a pretty deep squat, and that's because I've worked on my ankle stability. A lot of people can't get down here, okay? And that's because we sit in chairs all day. We don't add the stress necessary to make our joints mobile enough. Okay, and that's all over the place. And again, this is where a coach comes in to say, hey, this general stretching program isn't doing you well because you're not focusing on your tight spokes, you're focusing on all the spokes, which means you're also focusing on the loose spokes. So why don't hire someone, whether that's me or someone else, that will teach you where the tight spokes are and how to stretch and mobilize them effectively, and then adding in a strength and a cardio routine that's going to supplement that program. Yeah, and something that I've been really paying attention to is this idea of most of my training comes from the Czech Institute, which is a holistic coaching academy that teaches people how to train people physically, mentally, emotionally. And pretty much all my physical assessments, whether that's the spine, the plumb line, different range of motion assessments, and exercise prescription has been through the Czech Institute. And I love them. That's awesome. They have their strengths, they have their weaknesses. Something I've been really paying attention to is another kind of certification body called GODA, okay? And their idea is that we should train people to walk and run effectively first, because that is our base instinct as humans. We always want to be moving forward. We want to make sure that we're using our butt, our ankle, and our knees effectively, focusing a lot on the stability aspects of that, of having good arch support, of having good knee and hip and spine position in relation to walking, in relation to pushing things, and throughout exercise. So check them out. I really like a girl named Coach Carly. You can, if you go to my Instagram and you go to who I follow, you can search Coach Carly, Karlee. She's awesome on there. And yeah, if you just search GOAT, you'll find a lot of their stuff. Cool. So that's mobility and stability. That's the second one you want to focus on. All right, making sure we're balancing out that bicycle wheel. All right, so the next category we're going to focus on our pyramid of movement is strength and cardio. All right, so these are really important. Strength is the idea of having muscle mass. An optimal muscle mass ratio for your body is really important for longevity, for being strong, for having safe and optimal joints, for being able to move things around and feel strong and confident to take care of yourself. And also just for optimal physiological health. The muscles do a lot of things for helping your blood sugar, for helping your insulin sensitivity, and for just being a healthy and a happy human. Cardio is really important for cardiovascular health, of making sure that your cardiovascular system can optimally move oxygen and nutrients and waste products throughout the system, and being aerobically fit. Now, I didn't even think about this until now, but again, this exists. We have a genetic propensity to exist on this spectrum of being really good at strength exercises and being really good at cardio exercises. And you can really see this in the build of people who are actually just fit. Like you know that like long distance runners are very fit and strong, but in different ways that more so I am. I am definitely a strength power athlete. Okay, just by my body type and the way that I build muscle and the way that I do well in training and athletics, I'm more on this side. But on this side, we can see more skinnier individuals, taller individuals, lankier is a good term, that predisposes you to do certain things. And you want to focus on your strengths, right? But you also want to make sure that your weaknesses aren't too high, right? Make sure that your weakness, let's say it a different way, make sure that your weaknesses aren't holding you back from achieving the goals that you're setting up. So going through this, okay, so something that I really like is focusing on this minimal effective dose. And this goes for everything. The reason being minimal effective dose, how it plays out is, what is the minimal amount of work that you have to do to get the result you want? Okay? You can imagine like the amount of work you put in exists on this upside down U-shaped curve. Like, okay, I'm not doing enough work. Okay, doing more helps. It helps. Okay, doing more, this is the best results I'm gonna get. And then as I do more work and I work out longer and longer, it actually gets detrimental. Maybe you're overworking yourself. Maybe you're doing too much cardio, too much strength training, and you get detrimental. So trying to do the minimal dose that gets you up on this peak and maybe at the top. Maybe not at the top, right? Like if you can do a 30-minute workout and get 75% of the benefits, but an hour workout would get you 100% of the benefits, maybe that's like what you want to do. Okay, I'm cool with getting 75% because that means I only have to put in half the amount of time, and that makes more sense for what I can do right now. Again, figure out what time and energy and willingness do you have to actually put into the goals is a big indicator that we're going to talk about too. Okay, on the very basic, I'm going to do a talk just specific on these two things because I care a lot about it and I know a lot about it and it's very dense, but I'll give you the brief overview here. Okay, so minimal effective dose. Something that I like in regards to strength training is this idea that I learned from the Czech Institute, the Primal Pattern movements. These are 7 movements that are pretty foundational to being a human that everyone should be proficient in and that we develop as we work as humans. If you check out my last on episode 1 of the Evolution and Integration show, I talked about infant development a little bit and how we develop as infants through these primal pattern movements. So there is the upper body push and pull. Okay, you can also think of that's the horizontal way. There's the vertical push and pull. We have the squat. We have lunging, moving, right? We have walking, jogging, and sprinting. We have hinge movements, which are mainly from the hip, right? And we have twisting movements. All this sagittal plane stuff. Or sorry, not sagittal, frontal plane, transverse plane. There we go. Focusing on those primal pattern movements and making sure you have a balance of push to pull, of squat, of lunging, of hinging, of walking, and twisting. Okay, a lot of us need more twisting, in my opinion. So that would be one you could focus on. And then also making sure that we're always changing our program in the amount of sets, the amount of reps, the tempo, and the rest. How can you change this from your current exercise routine? Something that I'm focusing more on Shannon with now is because she was doing Beachbody for a really long time, she was set in stone with kind of lighter weights and doing kind of longer form intense stuff, which is fine. But when you do that for a year plus, you need to start getting in different types because your body is always adapting and it will get good at that. And then you're focusing on your strengths, and now we have to kind of focus on these weaknesses a little bit. Excuse me. So for her, and for any example, like we decreased the amount of reps she was doing and maybe increased the sets a little bit more. So let's go a little bit heavier. Let's get you working through this kind of higher range power stuff. And let's do some good like hypertrophy training. Maybe we're doing 8 to 10 reps with a different tempo than she's used to, longer rests than she is used to put in more work. And if you're a power athlete who has mostly done a lot of, less than 10 reps, a lot of bodybuilding stuff, maybe you will do better with doing longer workouts, with doing higher rep workouts. So your body's always adapting, so making sure that we're switching it up in the strength component. Cool. And strength has a lot of different things and a lot of different applications. Always bring it back to like, what is your work sport environment? And what is your goal? Is it to improve your posture? Is it to get out of pain? Is it to gain muscle? Is it to lose weight? Is it to be better at hockey? Is it to be better at running? Is it to be a better father, right? Using that as your why, okay, as the filter of like, okay, is this, if my goal in life is really to be like, live and be healthy for my grandchildren, right, and my kids, do I really need to be doing like max deadlifts? Probably not. Like maybe it makes you happy, but like, is this, where are you on the U-shaped curve, right? If you're not competing in bodybuilding, or if you're not competing in powerlifting competitions, maybe you shouldn't be doing barbell bench press. Maybe you should be doing more dumbbell bench press or more like cable pushes or like pushing things in the world, because that will help stabilize your core, and the barbell bench press isn't that great for your shoulder. I'm going down a little tangent. And then cardio types. This is something that I don't do enough of, but I get a lot of my cardio from playing ice hockey a lot and through daily movement and doing, for me, because I'm more on that more strength side of that spectrum, I like doing true kind of HIIT workouts. The term high intensity interval training has been getting thrown around, and we think that like classes and this kind of stuff is HIIT training. That's not. HIIT training is it's like, imagine sprints is the perfect example of HIIT training. If you are doing 95% intensity sprints, you have to rest for 2 minutes plus. That's HIIT training, okay? And that's what I tend to do. I tend to do like heavier movements and then get optimal rest, heavy movements, sprinting, Bulgarian bag stuff, rope stuff, take my optimal time to rest. Okay, these are different types of cardio. Steady state cardio, which is really cool. If you stay in a certain zone, I think it's zone 3, breathing only through the nose. I like walking on a treadmill at a really high incline, maybe with a weighted vest, maybe with something in my hands that's light, going for farmer carries walks, doing the rope for an extended amount of time. But breathing through that nose really helps keep you in that steady state, shooting for around 20, 30, 40 minutes of getting in that zone. And then also training the pain. So something that I learned from OPEX Fitness, which is kind of like, it is a certifying body, and they deal with a lot of CrossFit kind of athletes. They have this idea of sustain, pain, and gain in terms of this pyramid. So sustain is what, like doing exercise that you can sustain for long periods of time. That would be cardio. Doing gain exercises, which is the gain muscle and the gain strength. That's these primal pattern movements, up sort of, but more in the strength, like less reps, heavier weight. And then they have the pain, which is like your typical CrossFit, like go, go, go. How many calories can you get on a bike in 5 minutes? Like going as hard as you can, like pushing through that pain threshold, that lactate threshold, that's what that is. So these different types of cardio are gonna be amazing for improving your strength and using the mobility and the stability to have a better cardio output and to perform better in sports, to just be healthy, and just trying to figure out what is that minimal effective dose. Like this pain in these HIIT things, like you only have to do them once a week to see the benefits of it. It's not like you have to do it 3 or 4 times a week. Okay, cool. So we had in strength and cardio, and then the last one is power. All right, this is the last priority, and it's very specific to the individual. You can think of this as really important for athletes that are competing, that need to run, they need to sprint, they need to throw things as fast, as hard as possible. But it's also really important for the general population. And once you get this required stability and mobility, right, that you can do things effectively and safely, and then you get the strength and the cardio to be able to, it's more so about strength. Cardio isn't necessarily that important for power, but it has a component to it. But getting the required strength and in the movement patterns, meaning if you're trying to throw a ball as hard as you possibly can, like why don't we try just throwing a baseball like for maybe a week or 2 before we really start getting into it, right? It's essentially, the perfect example is a sprint. Like if you have someone who doesn't exercise that often, you wouldn't ask them, or at least you shouldn't ask them, to just sprint right away. No, why don't we learn how to walk well? Why don't we build up stability of the arches and the knees and the hips, make sure we're walking out of pain? Then why don't we learn how to jog? Okay, let's assess that. How are we jogging? Okay, can we like build up to a sprint a little bit? Okay, now, we're 3-4 months in. Now we're really gonna sprint like as hard as we can a few times a week, and that's it. Yeah, and working into these high intensity interval trainings, that kind of has to do with this. Doing things powerful like sled pushes, slamming stuff, hammers, balls, throwing stuff, throwing baseballs, doing Bulgarian bag tosses, throwing kettlebells, throwing rocks, doing these primal stuff, agility, working on jumping, it's very specific, right? You can do power in pretty much any one of these primal pattern movements and pretty much anything. But if you're gonna train power and you're new to training, like you haven't been training that long, just be careful with it. Again, hire a coach to help you out, to work through this stuff, or do your research. Ask me questions about, hey, like, should I be doing this powerful stuff, or maybe is that contributing to my shoulder issues? Is there something that I should do to focus on mobility and stability first for maybe, a few weeks, and then I can integrate some strength in there to get my shoulder stabilizers better. Okay, then I'll get back to my specific shoulder power exercises, and to feel better, to have all these base requisites, doing some daily activity, adding in some movement, stretching, movement snacks of stretching throughout the day. Okay, that's how you would kind of implement it into your life. All right, guys, and supplemental to all of this, and this is kind of the daily activity of making sure that you just hammer it in good. It all boils down to this, like boiling down to the daily activity. Okay, and this is why the pyramid is so important, to focus on these things. Breathing well, getting just active throughout the day, not sitting for more than 2 hours without having 10, 15, 20 minutes of movement in there. Taking the stairs, parking further away from the store so that you have to walk an extra 30 seconds, God forbid, to really help you just add in those movement snacks. Doing breathing exercises to pull those nutrients, to train the lymphatic system and the circulatory system, to move the energy, right, throughout our body effectively. And it doesn't have to be energy, right? You can think about it as moving oxygen, moving glucose, moving all the protein and the amino acids throughout our body effectively, energy. And getting that and realizing that it boils down to enjoyment and sustainability. We're trying to have health and happiness long term. So figure out what you enjoy, test, reflect on it. What could you have done better? What did you like? What did you not like? How can we improve that in your own life? Create a program, test it out, add it to your schedule, figure out what works, what didn't work, ask some people, get some feedback. There you go. So if you have questions more about about any of these parts, about how to move well, shoot me a direct message, whatever platform you're reading this on, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram. I'm active on all those. It's always me talking to you, and I'm always on there. So whether you want to learn more about this, whether you want to learn more about how I help my clients improve their posture, improve their alignment, work through all the kinks and all the issues around daily activity and working on relationships and communication and learning how to add these movement snacks in that are enjoyable and fun, and figuring out, okay, what is my strength training program? What is it right now? What have I done in the past? What am I used to? How can we integrate that with a strength and a cardio program that I think is going to benefit you specifically based on what you've done, right? Like, everyone's on this different journey, and that's why in my own coaching business, it is 100% personalized and individualized to make sure that you get what you want, you get the transformation that you want, that we set, okay, where are you at currently? Where have you been, and where do you want to go? As specific as possible to get you the most safe and effective route towards what health and happiness means to you. Yeah, and whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're working in the business, reach out to me if you have questions about this. If you want me to speak to your workplace and give talks and workshops on how people can move better, how can we implement movement snacks into the day, how can we eat better, how can we breathe better, how can we think better so we can be more productive and more successful. So Matt Grabowski here, the Integrated Man, signing off. Thanks for watching, guys. How to Move, and we'll catch you soon.